From the Toronto Star, I'm Rudgy Mudler, and this matters. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet the players in one of the most interesting legal battles happening right now, which involves two of the most successful technology companies in the world. In one corner, from Cupertino, California, makers of the iPhone you are probably listening to this podcast on, one of the richest companies in the world, Apple. And then the challenger. From Cary, North Carolina, makers of Fortnite and the Unreal Engine, we have Epic Games. It would be fitting if this was decided battle royale style, but there really are only two companies squaring off, although plenty of businesses in and outside of gaming are paying close attention. On Monday, September 28th, Epic and Apple meet in court after a business dispute involving Apple's iOS App Store and Epic's Fortnite started in mid-August. What's it about? Why, money, of course. Virtual and very real. To break it all down, we are joined by Kyle Orland. He is the senior gaming editor at Ars Technica, and his latest book, The Game Beat, collects 2 decades of columns examining the way games are covered in mass media. He's here to explain the Apple-Epic legal fight. Kyle, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I really want to get to the latest in this legal drama between these giant billion-dollar companies and two of the most interesting technology companies in the world. But, I think for my audience, we need to start at the beginning of this. And I think everybody knows who Apple is. Everybody in the video game world knows who Epic is. But for sort of a mainstream audience, can you tell us a little bit about them?
So Epic Games, if you've heard of a game called Fortnite, you know of Epic.
Fortnite is everywhere. Musicians are name-dropping it, sports stars are imitating it, New York tourist shops are t-shirtifying it.
Fortnite's probably the biggest game in the world right now. If you know anyone playing games under the age of 18, they're probably playing this. It's a massive online world. It's technically about building things and shooting people in this world, but really, for a lot of people, it's just a place to hang out with their friends and talk while having something to do. That's been their biggest thing right now, but Epic Games is also behind the Unreal Engine, which is kind of the graphical and game-building technology behind dozens and dozens of some of the biggest game franchises out there across consoles, PC, mobile games. They're also behind the Epic Game Store on PC, which is their effort to try and break the monopoly of Valve and Steam in distributing downloadable games. They are trying to get in there by giving developers better payment terms and also just by giving away free games every month to people. And they're starting to make inroads there, but it's been a long haul.
So the key here is that Epic makes Fortnite. And agreed, it's huge. And the thing is, inside of Fortnite, there's their own in-game currency. These are called vBucks. And this dispute essentially began because on iOS, or the Apple Store, Epic added a way within Fortnite so that people could pay directly for the vBucks, which violates Apple's policies. Why did Epic do that?
They really were tired of paying 30% of every dollar they made in Fortnite to Apple, is the long and short of it. This was also the case on Android. They did the same thing. It's an interesting backstory on Android because on there, you can actually distribute games without Google's approval. You can just have people download them to the phone and go outside of the Google Play Store. Epic tried this for a while, actually, for a period of 18 months, I think, and they had some success, but they eventually went back to the Google Play Store because they realized that players didn't want to go to some website and have to play with all their security settings and everything just to install a game. A little more to the point, though, on Apple's store, the only option they offer is to sell your game through the App Store. And when you do that, if you sell in-game purchases like these vBucks, you have to pay 30% to Apple. And Epic says this is not fair, this is monopolistic, they are charging way too much for what they're offering. So we want to be able to use our own payment processor. So what they did is they snuck this update into the game in a way called a hotfix. This was not the usual way of updating the App Store where you put the update to Apple, they review it over a day or two, and then if it matches all their requirements, it goes up. Instead, on the server side, they created a new payment processor and put that up immediately without Apple having a chance to approve it. You could pay through Apple's payment processor, or you could pay through Epic's. And with Epic's, you actually got a discount of $1. You'd pay $9 instead of $10 for the same amount of V-Bucks. And they were kind of passing the savings on to the consumer, they said. Apple, of course, was having none of this. Within hours, it was kicked off of the App Store. The game was still playable if you had downloaded it before, but if you were a new player or if you wanted any of the future updates to the game, which are necessary to play with people who are not on iOS, you were out of luck.
Okay, I want to get into some of that, but let's just go back to the 30% cut for Apple. This is known in the tech industry as the Apple tax, and this is something that lots of companies have railed against. I'm pretty sure there was a time when on Netflix you paid $9.99 if you went direct, or $12.99 through Apple because they didn't want to do this. And Apple is often described as a walled garden, and they say that they need to do this sort of keep their ecosystem protective, right? This has been how it's been going on for as long as the App Store's been around, correct?
Yes, and one of their big arguments, is that they have to approve every app to make sure that it's secure and that it goes with any of the requirements.
So, Mr. Cook, does Apple not treat all app developers equally?
Sir, we treat every developer the same. We have open and transparent rules. It's a rigorous process. Because we care so deeply about privacy and security and quality, we do look at every app before it goes on, but those rules apply evenly to everyone.
One of the major arguments they're making in legal documents is that Fortnite's alternative payment scheme does not comply with their parental guidance system. So if you set up your iPhone to say this child account can't make any purchases, actually Epic's alternative payment method went around that and kids would be able to use it. So that's one of Apple's arguments about security.
Which is a classic iOS gaming horror story that's been around for years, right?
With 2 tiny thumb clicks at $99.99 a pop, London stuck her parents with a $200 bill.
I just stood there with my mouth open. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry.
A lot of people have given their phone to a kid and then they realize when they get the credit card bill, $1,000, $5,000 been charged for, in-game stickers or whatever.
Okay, so now the thing is that, just as an observer, it feels as though Epic has clearly been spoiling for this fight. And then I think it's fairly clear to say after they launched this, they took a pretty sort of celebratory tone, right?
It's incredibly clear that Epic was ready for this. They put up this in the morning of August 13th, I believe. Within a few hours, Apple had taken them off of the App Store. And a few hours after that, they hosted an in-game event inside Fortnite where they debuted kind of a propaganda video, I guess is the best way to call it. You might just call it an advertisement. They're calling it 1980 Fortnite.
Today, we celebrate the anniversary of the Platform Unification Directives. For years, they have given us their songs, their labor, their dreams. In exchange, we have taken our tribute, our profits, our control. This power is ours and ours alone. We shall prevail.
It was a parody of the famous 1984 Macintosh ad from the Super Bowl in 1983 or 1984, I believe. Basically saying that we are here to free you from this walled garden. We want to set you free, and all companies free, from Apple's requirements that say we are the only ones who can approve what runs on iOS. Epic's argument is that smartphones should really be just like any other computing device. Like on a Windows machine, you can buy things through Steam, or you can buy things through, the Windows Store, or you can just buy an executable file from anyone and run it. They want the right to be able to create their own ecosystem inside iOS and be able to sell games or apps through that, and basically let anyone use their iPhone just as a regular computing device.
We'll be right back. I know that Epic's not located in Silicon Valley, but I love this because it's like Law and Order Silicon Valley edition. Because there's been some really, really great stuff going back and forth in these filings. Now, okay, we should say one of the reasons we're talking is because they're set up for a court date on September 28th. But they've been going back and forth, and they've been insulting each other. I want to say one of Apple's main responses, quote, Epic started a fire and poured gasoline on it and now asks this court for emergency assistance in putting it out. Apple has also said that this is a big marketing stunt, saying that Fortnite has been waning, and because of this and all this publicity, it's actually helping. Epic has now disputed that. Can we talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's been going back and forth? What have you found interesting about that?
It's been quite the war of words. Apple has pretty much accused Epic of theft directly, while Epic is casting itself as freedom fighters and calling Apple a monopolist, which is actually a very difficult legal term in this case. Obviously, Apple doesn't have a monopoly on the entire cell phone market. There's Android, for instance. They don't have a monopoly on personal computers either, but they're arguing they do have a monopoly inside the iOS market. They're the only ones who can approve of software in there, which gets into some very obtuse legal theories about what counts as tying one service to another. Similar thing that kind of went back to the Windows and Internet Explorer antitrust thing as of the 90s. So a little hard to parse there. But yeah, going back, the back and forth has gotten quite heated. Right now, the question before the court is whether there should be an emergency injunction filed either to help Fortnite or to help Apple in this case in their enforcing their rules. Epic is arguing that without the court's help, they are taking reputational damage. They won't be able to recover their users from Apple's retaliation. Apple is saying Epic basically shot itself in the foot. This was all self-inflicted damage. If they didn't want this, they could have brought the lawsuit directly instead of going around our contractual language and sneaking this in. And if they want to fix it, they can just go back to the way things were, and we'd be happy to put them back on.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the collateral damage and also support from the technology industry. I find this really interesting. You mentioned the Unreal Engine. So there was some talk about this because obviously there's a ton of game makers whose games are on the iOS store and need updates from that important software. But let's also have some fun. Microsoft, I believe, has thrown in an amicus brief going along with Epic, right?
Yeah, Microsoft is definitely going to be supportive of anything that hurts Apple's position. But more than that, I think Microsoft heavily relies on the Unreal Engine, which Epic makes. And that has kind of become collateral damage in this fight. Apple wants the right not just to block Fortnite from the store, which it has already done, but to block Epic's entire iOS software developer account. That would mean they could no longer release updates for Unreal Engine. Now, that would hurt Epic, of course, but it would also hurt hundreds, maybe thousands of developers who are using Unreal Engine on iOS for their games. And Epic has argued that this collateral damage is basically not fair to those companies. They shouldn't be punished for what Epic did with regards to Fortnite. And they also argue that it's a separate developer account, that what we did with Fortnite has nothing to do with what we're doing with Unreal Engine. Apple is basically saying, no, sorry, you snuck around our contracts. We just can't trust you anymore. We can't give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to security. For all we know, you could sneak some malware into Unreal Engine and create havoc on all these thousands and thousands of apps that use it without our knowledge, just like you did with Fortnite. They even said that it could cause, problems that could spiral through the entire internet and financial system. A little bit of hyperbole there, maybe, but regardless, a judge so far has said, no, Apple, you can't actually take retaliation on Unreal Engine as well. Whatever you want to do with Fortnite is fine, but for Unreal Engine, we're going to protect it for now until this fuller hearing, and then we'll see whose arguments win out.
I also do want to take this a little bit wider than the gaming world. And because, part of Epic's fight is to break up these online stores, and obviously other people are watching. Publishers sent a letter in, I believe, also saying, hey, we would like to get more favorable terms on these digital stores. So, I think it's a long shot that Epic gets very far with this, but say they do, what could the ramifications be industry-wide?
It'll be really interesting to see if Epic got everything it was asking for and, got the right to create its own app store within iOS. They would obviously not be the only ones. You'd see a flourishing of different app stores. Every cell phone provider, every major game publisher, every software maker, or, tons of new startups would come in saying, oh, ours is better. We take less from the developers. We give you cash back when you buy from us. It would really fragment the market quite a bit. On the other end, Apple would no longer get that 30% cut from all purchases and in-app purchases on iOS. Now, they're still making a lot of money, from the hardware itself. They would still make money from the App Store, which some people would continue to use. It would probably still be built into iOS. But it would definitely be a hit to their revenue model. The App Store is a large part of why the iPhone is so profitable. Now, will the court go that far? It seems a little unlikely to me. But then again, this 30% rate has also kind of been set by fiat by Apple for a while. I don't know if the court would see fit to just reduce that, or if they would let market competition between Apple and Android try and work that out. But it could definitely have ramifications.
I think the other thing here is that Apple is feeling a lot of antitrust heat from regulators around the world, right?
Sure. It's not happening in a vacuum, let me put it that way.
Apple found itself the target of EU antitrust investigations into its App Store and Apple Pay on Tuesday. It comes as the bloc targets online gatekeepers over alleged anti-competitive business practices aimed at blocking rivals.
There was the issue with Hey.com email, where Hey.com's email app was offered for free on the App Store. It had a subscription option, but it didn't offer that subscription option through the App Store. You had to go to their website and pay for the $99 annual subscription. What Apple was saying at the time is, no, you have to include the subscription option in the app, so we have a chance at least to get that 30% fee if people want to subscribe. The reasoning they gave is that the email app actually had no functionality unless you're a subscriber, and you can't just have an app that has no functionality in it. Similar things happening with Microsoft's xCloud streaming and Google's Stadia streaming. So even though streaming videos are allowed, like Netflix and Hulu on iOS, for streaming games, there's a kind of a double standard there where they said, no, you're not allowed to have streaming gaming service, period. If you want to make games, basically make downloadable games that work natively on iOS. They've since changed that and said, okay, you can have a streaming gaming service, but every single game on the service has to have its own separate App Store listing, and we have to approve every single one of those games separately, and plus those individual downloadable apps have to have some minimum functionality outside of the subscription, basically putting up so many hurdles that nothing like xCloud or Stadia really has a chance of existing. So the pressure that's coming to them, there's been some reaction, but it doesn't seem to have really made Apple waver yet. They're just kind of tinkering with the deck chairs.
So this goes to court on Monday. This is probably the first of a long and drawn out thing, right? What are you expecting from Monday's hearing?
Yes, this hearing is just about the emergency injunction that both sides are seeking. I would think the court would probably stick with the status quo. In the initial hearing, which was a few weeks ago, they basically said they agreed with Apple in the sense that, yes, Epic, you did this to yourself. If you didn't want to face the retaliation, you could have gone about things a different way. You could have just brought the suit without trying to break your contract. Instead, you wanted to go for the PR points. And so Apple is allowed to retaliate and take Fortnite off the store. But as far as the collateral damage for Unreal Engine, I believe they will probably leave those protections in place, let Unreal Engine continue to be developed for iOS as the fuller arguments come forward. So we're probably going to stick with the current status quo, and Epic will just continue to lose any of that money that it could have had from those iOS users.
Do you think that Epic is winning gamer sentiment in this?
It's hard to say. The people who played Fortnite on iOS, I feel like a lot of them...
Well, they're kids.
Yeah, they might not know exactly why they can no longer do it. And if they look into it, I'm not sure they'll give Apple the blame. It's a pretty clear story of what happened, and the story is that Epic moved first and Apple kind of moved back against them. And Epic can cast itself as, a freedom fighter looking for the freedom of your computing device all they want. For a Fortnite player, they might not see Apple as the bad guy. They're going to see Epic as kind of greedy in this, trying to get more of that 30% cut, and therefore endangering the game they like to play on their own platform.
Kyle, I think this has been really, really great for us. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think that we should know?
No, that's pretty much it for now. I'm looking forward to the hearing on the 28th, see what happens.
Kyle, I really, really want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, it was fun.
Kyle Orland is the senior gaming editor at Ars Technica. After we spoke to Kyle, there was an update to this story. A number of technology companies, including Spotify, Match Group, which is the parent company of Tinder, Tile, Blockchain, and others joined Epic Games in creating a non-profit group called the Coalition for App Fairness, which is aimed at creating a level playing field for app businesses and giving people the freedom of choice on their devices. The group wants other companies and developers to join them in their fight against Apple, and has a list of 10 App Store principles it is asking for, including that no developer should be required to pay unfair, unreasonable, or discriminatory fees or revenue shares. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. This Matters is hosted and produced by me, Raju Mudler, Adrian Chung, and Saba Etisaz. Produced and mixed by Sean Pattenden, and our director of programming is JP Fozo. Our show theme music is by So Called, and our episode music is by Mike DeAngelis. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.